This is Doug Brown. Well, thank you for joining us today on this wonderful opportunity to kind of talk about my favorite subject on the planet, which is goals and goals achievement. Um, and I got to admit, I've said to people in the past that if I only had one subject that I could talk to people about, it would be this whole goals achievement model. With the kind of when it all is said and done, if people walk out and become absolute wonders at goal achievement, while they may not be able to get everything in life, they can certainly get a lot of the things that they kind of set their mind to do. So I think it's one of the most powerful processes that we have, period, bar none. Based on who I see, what I think we can do, and I will give it about another 30 seconds, and if nobody else clicks in, with your permission, Dan and Leona, I'm going to go ahead and give you the short form of goals and goals achievement, unless you tell me that you'd like to see the whole schmagegi, in which case I will do the whole thing from soup to nuts exactly the way I do it for clients. So then I'll give you the first shot out of the box. Do you kind of want the short form towards goals, or do you really prefer to see everything that I've got the way I do it?
I want to see all you've got.
Dan, can you live with that?
Yes, but just so my notes are correct, can you spell schmagegi?
S-C-H Magigi.
Gotcha.
Phonetically.
Sounds great.
Phonetically done.
Got it.
But I do have to warn you, if it goes past 45 minutes, I do have a coaching assignment at 3. So.
All right. Well, it probably will, to be honest with you, but we'll go from there, and I will try not to delay unnecessarily. So I'm going to hit my share screen. Is it safe that you can see that slide clearly on your end?
Yes.
Okay. So kind of the agenda, the why set, the process, the types, the criteria, the mechanics, questions for planning out the details, and then strategies for determining target dates. Kind of why bother? Well, it keeps us on target, helps us make better decisions. Focus is certainly a critical element of being able to why bother doing this. And the last two I really do kind of see tied together. That as we attack and achieve goals, our self-confidence increases. As our self-confidence increases, our self-motivation to take this to another level kicks in. As we achieve that, what happens to our self-confidence? So it really does become an upward spiral in a lot of ways. This came from our buddy Ray Overdorf years ago. This literally goes back to 1987. And I know that because my oldest son had just been born. And we were in a session, and Ray asked us to think about the last project that we did around the house. And for me, it was literally converting the room that I'm sitting in now to a nursery. And he drew this box on a whiteboard and basically said, let this box that you see down here represent the total timeline from the time that you first started thinking about that project to the time that everything was done in all its detail. Got the group to do that. He said, okay, fine. Then he asked us the question, how far did we have to get into that project before we literally saw the whole thing kind of buttoned up in our mind's eye? And I'll be the first to admit, my visualization skills in those, when I came into this business, were worse than horrendous. It was just not something that I excelled at. So for me, and as well as sounds like an awful lot of other people in the room, when I had the equivalent of paint on 3 walls, I could literally see the Bunnykins wallpaper or border at the top. I could see that. I could kind of see what it was going to look like with the furniture and the curtains back in it and so on. And then he asked us this question: how long did it take to complete the last quarter of the project relative to how long did it take to go from the time we first started thinking about, yep, this would be a project that we needed to do, to the time that in essence I had paint on 3 walls. And everybody said, oh, it's shorter. And he said, that's the power of goals and goal setting. He said, imagine that there was a way that you could front load the power of the belief that you had when you're 3/4 of the way through it, or when you finally saw what that was going to look like. Imagine that there was a way that you could front load that belief. What would it do to the total elapsed time of the project? And we basically all said it would shorten it. And he said, that's the power of goal setting. It's being able to see your outcome before you ever get started on that project. We really have 2 major types of goals here, and that we kind of make sure people understand. Tangible, which is kind of measurable, can be 1-0 type of goals. Yep, you did it. No, you didn't. Or this is how you did along the way. The intangible, I like to think in terms of becoming goals. In different industries and so on, tangible goals might be called hard number goals. Intangible might be called soft number goals or soft goals. But I always thinking about the becoming piece of it, because when I think about kind of how that kind of plays out, we have a tendency to measure our intangible goals by the completion of tangible action steps. We measure our success on intangible goals based on the completion of tangible action steps. So for example, if I wanted to become a better public speaker, could we agree if I read books on public speaking, if I watched videos on powerful public speakers, if I got coaching on it, if I videotaped myself and then critiqued myself or had somebody else critique me, can we agree that as I'm knocking off each one of those action steps, if you will, I'm probably becoming a better public speaker? The next kind of breakdown of goals we have are short and long term. And this is probably one of the most misunderstood pieces of the puzzle. That short and long term goal have nothing to do with importance. They only have something to do with duration. So we look at short term goals as kind of the building blocks that's going to allow us to get to where our ultimate destination or our ultimate situation desired is. Our long-term goal is really, what is it that we're really trying to accomplish? And you'll notice that I've put the word ultimate results in there. And that's something that you're going to see me come back to and touch on a second time. So we typically make progress on our long-term goals by accomplishing a whole series of short-term goals. We use the Why SMART criteria, going through that quickly. Written, why written? Because they have a tendency to not change over the course of time. I guess it was Harvey Mackay from Mackay Envelope had a great expression, the pencil doesn't forget. You know, when we've written it down, we've got something that we can refer back to. The harmonious, again, to what degree are our goals really in sync with each other and not taking ourselves into 2 directions in opposition to each other. And in the course of corporate goals, to what degree do individual goals support? They don't have to pair it, but to what degree do they support the long-term corporate goals? The yours. In our business, we have an expression, don't let anybody should all over you. That's SHOULD. Because in general, we're going to be a lot more committed to achieving our goals than we're going to be in achieving somebody else's goals. The SMART and Why SMART, the specific, I must say, of all the places that I've watched the wheels fall off the truck, the lack of specificity is really a major, major piece of that where those errors come through. People have a tendency to want to write these platitudes as goals, as you're going to see. And it really screws us up in several different ways, as we're going to go over here in a moment. The measurable is pretty much what you see is what you get here. The attainable. We're in the goal achievement business. We're not just in the goal setting business. And one of our colleagues, Arnie Rinsler, loves to use the phrase, is this a grow 6 inches goal, or is this basically a weigh 5 pounds less goal? That unless I'm prepared to have my thigh bones broken and 6 inches of metal put into my femur and replacing my femur, I'm probably going to be the same height that you know me to be today. Realistically high and results oriented. And realistically high had nothing to do with where you were in the 70s. It's really having that element of where it has some stretch to it. But again, the results oriented, not just activity oriented, is critical. I'm just going to shift this back up. The target date. The sales trainer Zig Ziglar has a great expression. A goal is a dream with a deadline. I love that in terms of really kind of making it something that's crystal clear in my mind. The other thing is, when you think about, even as we watch sports teams and different things that have time elements to it, think of the level of focus that takes place as that clock is kind of clicking down. That time boundary and so on tends to work with an awful lot of people that need that exterior element or that external element before they'll do some great work for themselves. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Some of the other things that I kind of talk about is consistent with your values. If I ask you to work on something that's morally repugnant to you, how committed are you really going to be? The next is rank ordered. And I must say, this is really a real hot button issue for me. Back in my days when I worked for Procter & Gamble, we absolutely had rank ordering to the goals. And it's something that I end up working with almost all of our clients on in terms of helping them to develop this approach. Why do I think this is so important? Let me tell you a story. Imagine, if you will, that you're a shipping clerk and you work for an organization and you understand that there's really only 2 goals in the organization. One is to maximize profitability. The other is to provide outstanding customer service. You understand those are the 2 goals. It's Friday at 4:45 in the afternoon and your phone rings and somebody wants to place an order. Now, if you believe that the goal is profitability first and provide outstanding customer second, typically what the customer is going to hear on the other end of the phone is you'll get right on it first thing Monday morning. So that's the way you operate. And I come in and I see you Monday at 11 and you can count every vein in my neck. I'm just absolutely apoplectic. And using some blue language, I basically say to you, I don't understand what part of provide outstanding customer service you didn't understand, but I just got off the phone with our client, our customer who's just absolutely livid, and I don't expect this to ever happen again. Got it? And you go, got it. So 4 days later, it's 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, or 4:45 on a Friday afternoon, and the telephone rings, and this time you hold your people overtime, you call in special trucks, and sure enough, that stuff is on the customer's dock come 7 o'clock Monday morning. And about Wednesday, I walk in and you can see every vein in my neck. And I'm just beside myself. And I go, you know what? When I just took a look at the overtime report, we're not running a religion here. We're trying to run a company. And if we can't do it profitably, I don't need guys like you. I don't know what part of maximize profitability you failed to be listening to, but I don't expect that to ever happen again. Got it? And you go, boss, I got it. 2 days later, you're sitting in your office at 4:45 and your telephone rings. What do you do? Now, the most popular answer in 30 years of asking this question is, I don't pick up the phone. The second answer that I often get is, well, I go talk to the CEO and ask him or her, what she wants done. Well, fast forward about 2 years, and Doug, the consultant, is in talking to this company president, and he's singing the blues. Oh my God, nobody will ever make a frickin' decision around here. How come I got to make every frickin' decision? Can't anybody think for themselves? And I ask the question, do you have a published hierarchy of goals? Without having that in place, we're really playing stump the chump with our people, that we're hoping that they're going to guess what we have on our mind based on information that we may know that they don't. And if they guess wrong, we get to yell at them. Talk about setting up our people to lose. What an unbelievable way to do that. The next is keep it positive. Don't think of pink elephants. 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 What just happened? There's a high likelihood that you were thinking about pink elephants. So we always want to have people write their goals based on what they want, not on what they don't want. And then it really has to be something that's really going to require and have our full commitment. And here's why. Again, this one happened to come from our colleague Ray Overdorf. When you make a decision, make a commitment. Because inevitably, as soon as we do that, we're going to be faced with problems. Some of them are going to be little problems. Some of them are going to be big problems. Some of them are going to be disguised as attitudes. But we're going to be faced with all these problems. And then what happens to most people's level of commitment when they're faced with all these problems? Well, it tends to weaken and kind of fall apart. And then what we see is people go back and go, geez, I don't know what I was thinking. And they go to change their mind and they question the decision instead of putting their energy to solve the problem. One of the most important things we can train and develop our clients to understand is don't confuse decision-making and problem solving. Once somebody's gone through the decision-making process and they haven't cheated the process, in general, my advice is don't go back unless you plan on going that way. If you've done a great job on the front end of that, and you said, this is what we're going to do, then spend the rest of your time figuring out how do we solve the problem, not just making a new decision. What you see here are some real live examples of things that I've been exposed to over the years where people go, oh yeah, we do goal setting around here. Increase frequency of the communication with the hourly staff. It's not really specific. It's not really time bound. It's not really measurable, and there is certainly no result oriented with it. Establish a new training program for supervisors by October 1st. I consider this a great example of an activity goal, not a results goal. Because if I had a situation where I was reporting to you and I walk into your desk and see you're in your office on September 28th, and I basically walk in and say, here you go. Here's the training program. I get a chance to kind of take it off my things to do list. But here's my question. If supervisor behaviors do not change one iota as a result of that training program, was I productive or was I just busy? So I consider that to be a great example of an activity goal, and I see those all the time in corporate America. I want to understand what's the result that you want. I think establishing a new training program is a wonderful example of an action step. Improve productivity in the department, not specific, hardly somewhat measurable, but no real metrics associated with it, certainly no time boundaries. This may be considered more of an intangible goal, or quite candidly in our nomenclature, more of a goals category than a specific goal. If you contrast that with the last one, by the end of the quarter, get 10 appointments with decision makers who operate manufacturing companies within New Jersey and employ more than 250 people. If all the goals that I saw written by people had that less level of clarity and specificity, I would absolutely be a happy camper. One of the exercises that we did with our colleagues once was we gave them some really general statements as goals, and then asked them to go to work in their groups in terms of understanding the obstacles and how they were going to actually accomplish it. And one of the things that we found was the hazier the goal on the front end, which is nice and easy to write. I mean, anybody can do it at the speed of light. Where the wheels fell off is because it was so undefined on the front end. It made obstacle identification just incredibly difficult to get involved in. It's like the obstacles were going on forever and ever and ever. Some more examples that I've seen. Well, we want to create an advertising campaign by January 1st. We want to reduce waste and scrap. We want to improve morale. Now, this is a little tricky one because improve morale is certainly an intangible goal. Save money on supplies, run better meetings, creates 20 centers of influence, managing my time better. These are all wonderful notions for goals and maybe wonderful goals categories, but they don't meet our why smart criteria. On this last page here, increase total sales of widgets by 10% while maintaining current margins. If there was a date associated with that, I'd be fine with that. Decreasing wait times and stop losing customers is couching positive things in negative language. So we always want to talk about what we want what we want, not just what we don't want. Going on, they must have sufficient rewards and consequences. As human beings, we only do things for one or two reasons: to either get a gain or to avoid a loss. That's really it. They have to have some kind of element of behavior change associated with it, or we would already be in possession of these things that we're setting goals about. And it has to expand beyond our current needs. If somebody just got up after a 7-course meal, no matter what kind of food stuff I would order them or that I would offer them, they'd be saying, God, I'm so full, I can't put in anything else, thanks, but no thanks. So we always want to have our goals so that it's kind of beyond where we are right now. Getting into the rewards of the mechanics and rewards and consequences. Understand that when we start to ask people, so why do you want this? Kind of a basic so what question. They almost always start by listing the logical rewards of what they want. But we understand that usually people take action based on emotion, not logic. So we want to ask those questions multiple times to really drill down into those to make sure that we're really creating almost this white hot desire for this goal to take place. Kind of focusing on the second paragraph, pushing ourselves to really develop the full impact. So what, and I typically ask that multiple times, or why is that so important, and kind of drill down until those are exhausted. One of the ways that we can do that is if we tie in the balanced scorecard as kind of endpoints for this. What are the benefits from a financial perspective, a management perspective, a customer-based perspective? What's this going to allow us to do from an innovation and growth perspective? And then kind of taking a look, here's another series of questions that I've developed over the course of time. What are the main obvious benefits? Who will benefit and why? What else will be able to happen as a result of achieving that goal? And why would that be so important or so beneficial? What will be the positive impact on others if you achieve this goal? So I really try to kind of round out the exploration of why this goal is really worth doing. Then we can do the flip on that in terms of helping them kind of uncover or identify the consequences. What are the main or obvious consequences? Who will be hurt and why? What won't be able to help or happen? Why would that be detrimental? What will be the negative impact on others? And again, you can use all of the balanced scorecard tying in there as well. So you're creating the kind of the teeter-totter, if you will, of all the positive upside and all the avoidance of the negative, of the downside. At the end of this slide, I typically ask people on their goals planning sheet that I kind of have them filling out along the way to write in this question. If this is so important to us, why don't I have it already? And I typically have them fill that in below the consequences block, in between that space and the obstacles block. And then I have them turn their paper sideways to from landscape to portrait, and I have them write in the margin. If this is so important to us, why don't we have it already? In fact, I think I'm ahead of myself here. Just one second. At the end of the let me do a correction. Below the consequences block and above the reward, above the obstacles, I ask them to write in the question, are you willing to do whatever it takes to make this goal work? Are you willing to do whatever it takes to make this goal work? That's one of the acid tests here on the to make sure that there's enough there between the rewards and consequences that it really is worth doing. Then I ask them to turn the paper and say, well, if this is so important to us, why don't you have it already? And I ask them to think really, really simplistically. What needs to be overcome or changed or added or eliminated before this goal can be achieved? Kind of what block, kind of that old line from Pogo, we've met the enemy and he is us. Where am I blocking myself? Where am I making it hard for myself? Where am I getting in my own way? Then we get involved in the brainstorming. And now one of the things that this whole goals process has done when done well, the goal may be a logical or an emotional piece going from right brain to left brain or left brain to right brain. When we're in the identifying the rewards and consequences block, we're typically starting left brain and going to right brain. Same thing on the consequences, starting left brain, going right brain. When we start talking about the obstacles, we're probably going to start it's more of a left brain activity. When we're now on brainstorming right brain activity, this is really where we're given the opportunity to kind of really free think, really free associate when it comes to developing different ways, if you will, to solve this problem. This is one of the biggest challenges I find in our business, getting people to generate enough solutions. It's not just, here's the obstacle, here's the solution. This is really designed to really kind of think expansively of putting together all kinds of alternative solutions. Then making a decision of which one I'm going to actually do, which then takes us down into the detailed action steps piece. You'll notice I put what is the next physical action step. This concept I borrowed from David Allen's book in terms of kind of making the most of your time. And he said one of the things in his observation in terms of why more goals weren't achieved is that they didn't always get broken down into kind of what was the next step to do, or what was the first step to do. I had been looking for an analogy for this for years, and he provided one in his book that basically he used the analogy, let's say it's quarter 12 on a Wednesday, and you're looking down at your things to do list, and you notice it has service my car on that item. Well, most people, unless they have an oil filter in one hand and an oil filter wrench, and they're dressed in a set of coveralls, are not in a position to service their car. So what happens? That basically goes from today's things to do list to tomorrow's things to do list. Where he takes it is he kind of role played this little section here. And he said, so are you planning on servicing your car yourself, or are you going to have somebody else do it? And the person was answering and said, no, I'm going to have somebody else do it. He said, oh, okay. Are you going to have an appointment, or are you just going to kind of drive in? Oh, no, I want to have an appointment. And he said, well, do you have an appointment now? The person said, no. He said, so David said, so what's the first thing I need to do? Well, I need to get an appointment. He said, okay. Do you happen to know the phone number for the garage? Well, no. So what's the first thing I need to do? Well, I need to get the phone number for Joe's Garage. When you think about it, there's a lot of things at 5 of 12 on a Wednesday that we can't do. But using today's technology, we can certainly get the phone number for Joe's Garage. And we are infinitely closer to getting our car serviced if we have the number for Joe's Garage, so we can call and make that appointment, than if we don't. And then checking dates to solve the problem. How does this kind of look? Over the years, I've watched a lot of people kind of write some big goals or some big kind of targeted action steps. But one of the things that I found in reality is a lot of times, again, to David Allen's concept of, you got to get the phone number to make the appointment and so on before you're going to get your car serviced and your oil changed and so on. So where you see the dash lines really represent all those things that really need to be done, but nobody wants to bother writing them down. And years and years and years ago, I had read in the Compendium of All Great Information, and of course I'm referring to Parade Magazine, that it took the average American 22 minutes to get back to the level of concentration that they were working on when they were interrupted. And originally I thought, my God, that's a long period of time. But then I started to think about it. We get a phone call, and somebody asks us to get an answer to a question, and so we pull a file, or we call somebody else to get the answer, and they call us back, and then we call back the person that we just want to talk to. 22 minutes is a heartbeat. So I'm not going to bother to write any of those those dash lines down, because I'm a pretty smart guy. So I get started along the way. Bing, ding, ding, someone's face. All of a sudden my phone rings. Okay, where am I? Did I do this? Yeah, I think I did this. Did I do this? Yeah, I think I did this. Did I do this? Yeah, I think I did this. Ring. Okay, now where am I? Did I do this? Yeah, I think I did this. Yeah, I got this done. Ring, followed by lunch, followed by a meeting, followed by another phone call, followed by another meeting. And now I'm getting back to work on this. And it's like, okay, now where am I? Did I do this? And remember, none of these dash lines are written down. All we see on our list are these big solid blue lines. So what can happen is, without kind of a written plan, we end up going over the same ground over and over and over again. So do I use this to go buy a bag of carrots at my local grocery store? No. But on any kind of thing where there's really that I don't want to fail, this system works incredibly well. The other thing I've witnessed kind of from an observational perspective is, if all of a sudden people have an obstacle that they don't know how they're going to get over, what I find happens to their behavior and their speed starts to really slow down. And imagine that this gap represents a bridge being out on a highway. And so you're driving along the road here. If you suspected that there was a bridge out, can we agree that you're not going to go right to this point and slam on your brakes and hope that you can stop in time without having to go careening down into the gully? You're going to start slowing down way, way back here to be safe, that you can stop in plenty of time. One observation that I share with managers all the time is, if they're kind of doing their best management by wandering around and saying, so how's it going? Anytime somebody says to you, oh, I haven't started on it yet, I wonder if that's really code for, I've got an obstacle and I don't know how I'm going to work around it. Because can we agree that from a face-saving perspective, it's a lot easier for somebody to say, oh, I haven't gotten to that yet, than it is for them to admit that they're stymied. So I ask people to pay attention to that when they're managing other people. From the science of neuro-linguistic programming, we have both possibility as well as necessity thinkers and behaviors. Possibility people tend to be driven by rewards, and they're always interested in kind of what's new, what's next, what's exciting, where do we go from here? And they're very, very much future focused. And so the way they run their brain is they can start down here at the start date, say, okay, this is going to take me an hour, and this is going to take me a day and a half, and this is going to take me 2 hours, and this is going to take me this, so on. And this becomes their target date. You'll know that you're dealing with a possibility thinker because they'll use language like, I wish to, I'd like to, I will. Necessity thinkers, on the other hand, are more concerned with the fear of loss than they are the desire for gain. And so with a necessity thinker, they really have to start at the drop dead date and plan backwards. So for example, they start to kind of think back, okay, this is going to take me an hour. I can probably squeeze this done in 15 minutes. Oh, I can do this, blah, blah. And now they get down to the start date. Whoops. Now, if the start date is 4 days from now, I'm reminded about a shirt I literally saw in Reading, Pennsylvania, downtown, that said, everybody needs something to believe in. I believe I'll have another beer because I've got 4 days before I have to get started on this project. On the other hand, if that start date was 2 days ago, I kind of think about those cartoon eyes that you see in the cartoons characters as kids, where the eyes kind of go, "Ooga," kind of out of the face. It goes, oh my God, I'm 2 days behind before we even get started. The mental adrenaline kicks in, and we're off to the races. You can tell you're dealing with a necessity thinker because they'll use language like, I gotta, I have to, I must. Now we get down to the specific action plan, or the action steps. And this is really project planning to a large degree, kind of understanding what's going to be done by when and by whom. But I've tried to take that down to 3 other levels. Number 1, what are those things that are going to be done by you and you alone? What date will they need to begin? How long should it take? Do any steps need to be started before others? For example, most people do not clean the carpet and then decide to paint the ceiling. There really is kind of a natural order of things. And how often will you need to act? Then, what are those things that need to be done with others? Whether they're your boss, whether they're your peer, whether they're being with people that report to you. Same set of questions with the addition of the bottom one. What's the method of follow-up and accountability that we're going to use? And then the third, I take it and I say, what are those things that are going to be done by others? That until they do their piece of the puzzle, I'm not going to be able to take this on to another level or to get my piece done. Those questions are identical up to and including the method of follow-up and accountability. Art lovers everywhere, you'll recognize a flower and you'll recognize a butterfly. Now, we all know that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But if we've ever seen a butterfly fly, it looks something like this. It's not unusual for people to say to us, oh my God, why bother planning? It's not worth the paper it's written on as soon as it's done. And I'll say, yeah, kind of humor me. And I'll use the example of the butterfly and the flower. A butterfly is definite about where it wants to end up, but it's flexible about the way to get there. Years ago, somebody had once shared with me that a plane taken off out of LA heading to Honolulu is off course more than 90% of the time because of changes in rotation of the earth and wind and all this kind of weather. But the plane is definite about where it wants to end up, but flexible about the way we get there. One of the things that I've often done with people to kind of show them this is that if there was a way that you could imagine me superimposing that curve that you see in front of you, and that all of a sudden I went like this, and now you're looking at it in 2-dimension. I'm following a curve that looks like this, but in essence, what you're seeing is a straight line. Maybe we're making far more progress toward our goal than we really see, but than we really realize. Maybe we truly do need, so to speak, a paradigm shift in terms of how much progress we're really making. Ladies and gentlemen, that is my take on goal setting and goal achieving. If you want to take yourself off of mute, and feel free to ask any questions or make any comments that you would like to make. And then if you don't have one, I will start picking on you and asking you questions. Dan, I know you were on the shortest time window. What kinds of thoughts or questions do you have?
Well, I have nothing to prepare for now because I'm doing executive leadership coaching session on goal achievement and turning solutions into actions here in about 10 minutes. So thank you for my prep work.
Yeah, I love it when a plan comes together.
I do too. When I looked at this and went, timing's perfect. No, that's great. And it's, I guess, really my biggest takeaway from it is when we look at goal planning sheets, and I know the first time that I looked at it and said, okay, that's kind of neat and that's fine. And it's a track. I think the more that you use them, the more that you coach people through them, the more you begin to uncover about them and the power that lies within. Yep. I think the most important piece that I find is that the short-term goals really are the building blocks for the long-term goals, and that's getting people into those little action steps and thinking about them in terms of project management. Yep. What are all these little things? And I tell people a lot of time, stop carrying the whole weight of what you have to accomplish on your shoulders. In other words, don't be doing May's work today. Just what do I need to do this week to move me closer to my goal? And, frankly, that way you can walk out on a Friday and say, I won the week.
There you go. I like that.
As opposed to walking out on Friday and saying, how was your week? And them saying, not bad, but we still got that. Okay, well, you're carrying too much baggage. Get that noise out. Focus on what's in front of you. And I think those action steps are really critical in helping people break it down and feel good about what they're accomplishing along the way.
Super. Thank you. Leona, what are your takeaways having seen this?
Yes, similar comments as to what Dan has, but what I find with my clients is a lot of times that they underestimate the time that it takes to accomplish their goals. And usually that's because the goal is too big, and then they get overwhelmed, and it's not until we break it down into short-term goals that they can start to feel that they have a sense of accomplishment. But that's always a reminder as they come up with a goal and it's really too big. And as we start to process through the goal sheet, they realize, wait a minute, I can't do this until I've done this. And then let's pull out another sheet and let's make this our goal first here and walk through that. And that takes some thought, some processing and thinking, especially when somebody isn't used to setting goals.
Well, especially at the level, especially thinking through at the level of specificity that we want them to think through.
Right, right. Because they can be very quick about, okay, I've got my goal. And then it's very, very quickly that they get into that obstacle that they had not identified. And then they're stuck.
Got it. Wendy, I'm going to just ask you to take yourself off of mute. You've seen me do this a couple of different times over the years. Anything jump? Did you hear anything differently this time, or have a different impact than what you've seen in the past?
I wouldn't say anything new, different, just always good reminders.
Fair enough. Well, ladies and gentlemen, unless you have a question for me, I'm going to give you 13 minutes of your life, or 13 minutes of your life back.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing with us. This is very, very, very good.
Super. Glad to do it.
Yes, thank you, Doug.
Happy selling, everybody.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Doug.
Bye-bye.